Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Ore, and today I would like to show you a little contraption that I've been working on for the past couple of days. This contraption is a variation on a very popular theme, which is creeper farming. By now you probably all know how most creeper farms work. But what you probably don't know is that the first couple of working creeper farm specific designs for Bedrock Edition were actually featured on this very channel. What made me decide to try and make the initial designs for the creeper farms were a change that Mojang introduced in a certain version of the game. I don't remember the number exactly, but it was quite some time ago. You can look for the archives in my channel. This change made creepers' height smaller than that of zombies and skeletons. Before that, they were all considered to be the same height by the game. But after that version, creepers became 1.8 blocks in height instead of 1.95, or I think that's what it was. What this allowed was to use trapdoors on the ceilings, like so, to prevent mobs that were taller than 1.8 blocks in height from spawning. But it didn't prevent mobs that were smaller than 1.8. And besides the creeper that we wanted, there was one very annoying mob that was still allowed to spawn on this platform underneath. That mob is of course the dreaded spider, which is often a problem in mob farms. So the real challenge when making the first creeper mob farm was to try and find a way to prevent spiders from spawning. And my idea back then was that, well, since height mattered, width probably mattered as well. And I had even less knowledge of the game as I do now, but I devised this diamond-shaped pattern made of fence posts, which allowed, in my mind, enough space for 1 block wide mobs to spawn, but not enough at any spot for 2 wide mobs, such as the spider, to spawn. As a consequence, preventing it from spawning altogether. And well, it turned out that it worked perfectly. And the first creeper farm for Bedrock Edition was born. It used a big platform like this, full solid big platform with buttons at the end, because back then buttons at the end of a platform tricked mobs into jumping down to their death, because they saw these buttons as full blocks. They believed these were walkable, so they attempted to walk over these buttons and fell. Then, well, like I just said, these buttons back then were enough to trick mobs into thinking that there was a safe block to walk on, where there was instead a hole. So I made the second version of my farm, of my initial farm, which was something like this. In the meantime, somebody had suggested that instead of fence posts, I apologize to this person if they're listening, because I don't remember who it was initially. But it was a brilliant idea. They suggested that I use buttons rather than fence posts to prevent spiders from spawning. And it worked brilliantly because, of course, buttons aren't spawnable either. So this worked perfectly and was much cheaper. So the second version of my farm was something like this, and it remains to this day basically this shape, this checkerboard pattern of holes remains the base or the template for many creeper farms. Navy Nexus, who you probably know, quickly after I released my second farm, quickly discovered that the pattern could be simplified into this checkerboard shape of buttons. And this became even more the template for further farms to come. You simply had to put buttons in a very easy to remember pattern instead of my slightly more complicated diamond shape. The problem, well, there are actually two big issues with this farm. The first issue is that, as many users probably discovered painfully, it relies on bugs to work. Here in the initial designs we were using buttons placed on the side of holes, but this was, of course, the fact that mobs would attempt to walk over these and fail was, of course, not intended behavior. So somewhere down the line, Mojang decided to remove that feature, and mobs stopped walking over buttons when placed on the side of blocks. And I'm sorry for everyone who built my initial farm or any of its derivatives, because well, they probably spent several hours building these, only to discover one morning that they weren't working anymore. Luckily, soon after the version that removed, well, that bug, somebody, I think it was Rufus Atticus, discovered that we could use coral fans instead. So it was just a matter of replacing the buttons with coral fans. But, well, isn't it obvious? It's clearly not an intended feature either, and will probably be removed down the line. Not a very perennial solution, in my opinion. Although it's a brilliant idea. The obvious alternative would be using open fence gates, like this. But using open fence gates isn't a great solution either, for two reasons, in my opinion. The first reason is that not fence gates, trapdoors, sorry. Open trapdoors have a hitbox. They can be walked down and they can be fallen down onto. What this means is that the hole is smaller and the point at which mobs start falling is further inside of the hole, potentially. If a mob spawns on this platform, it'll start falling not from the edge of this block, but from the hinge of that trapdoor. And since very often mobs tend to fall at a slightly slanted angle, what can happen is that instead of falling straight down, like so, they might end up landing here, on the edge of this block here. Or if they came from this side, they might end up on the hinge of an open trapdoor. And if the fall was high enough, they might even die there, leaving their item impossible to retrieve. The second reason why I don't think open trapdoors are a good solution is that they're a question mark. Mobs attempting to walk over closed trapdoors is obviously an intended feature. Otherwise, you couldn't make traps with tripwire and stuff like that. However, mobs attempting to walk over open trapdoors, now, I'm not so sure that it's intended. So it might get patched out somewhere down the line. And the problem is that trapdoors are insanely expensive to make for what they are. Let me show you quickly. It's 6 wood planks for 2 measly trapdoors. And well, in my opinion, harvesting wood is probably one of the most annoying chores in Minecraft. You need it constantly for everything. So harvesting tons of wood to make not only trapdoors for your ceilings but for your holes as well, no way I'm doing that. It's gonna take way too long. It's gonna be way too much of a chore for something that might end up getting patched out of existence altogether in a couple of updates. That would be awful. Like, you spend literally a couple of days, painful days, struggling through your axes and your wood and your trees, and then it all stops working. Not worth the effort, in my opinion. So this is the first problem with this design. It relies on bugs that can be patched out of existence. The second problem is that its number of spawning spots is limited. This here, where the button is of course non-spawnable, but it can be easily retrieved on the platform underneath by shifting the platform sideways. If you have a block here, this spawning spot is not spawnable on this platform, but it's spawnable here on the platform underneath. But the hole, it has to be there. It has to stay there. So this column here is never going to be spawnable. So I was thinking to myself, isn't there a way that these two problems, these two issues could be solved? And especially my primary focus was on making the farm perennial, avoiding reliance upon bugs for it to work. And after a bit of thinking, it occurred to me there was a very, very simple solution, a very simple trick that could be used to solve both problems in one quick swipe. This trick I explain in another of my videos, which is about farming blazes. You can find it in my channel, on my channel, somewhere in my archives. And it's very simple. It relies on the fact that mobs can and will jump down onto a platform below if it's an option, as long as one simple condition is fulfilled. And this condition is that they do not take damage from the fall. As you probably know, in Minecraft, mobs and players can fall down 3 blocks without taking any amount of damage. Then they start taking 1 point of damage per block after that. So for example, this creeper here would fall 3 blocks undamaged and then take 1 block of damage for the 4th block. If this was 10 high, it would take 7 points of damage. And since this fall here would incur damage, this creeper is never going to jump down. It doesn't want to hurt itself. It's not crazy. Or, well, it's probably crazy because it's a creeper, but it's not that crazy. But here, this platform here, it's only 3 blocks. It's only a 3 blocks fall for a creeper that spawns here. So this creeper here, eventually, it might take some time, but eventually will decide to jump down onto this platform. It might take 20 seconds, or it might take 1, it depends on its mood, but eventually it will jump down. You can take my word for it. So what this allows us to do is basically to take this design here and shift it 1 block to the side, which is exactly what I did here. By shifting the top platform or the bottom platform, see, he just jumped. By shifting the platforms 1 block, as you can see, the holes aren't aligned anymore. So this here is now spawnable. Instead of having a full column of non-spawnable spots, we have none. We don't have that column anymore. And the buttons, well, they're shifted as well. So this is not spawnable, but this is. Effectively, we have 100% coverage for spawning. So now, let's place a few creepers here to try and see if they'll jump down. And one just did. Eventually, they always do. Unless, and the second one just did. Unless they spend so much time idle that they end up despawning. Which can happen. It's not very often that it happens, but it does happen. But as you could see, and as you can see with this one, there's an issue. Creepers tend to choose sometimes to pathfind over the buttons rather than jumping into the holes. So I thought to myself, isn't there something that I could place, that I could use instead of buttons to force them into the holes? And there was an obvious answer. It was to revert back to using fence posts. Because fence posts have a hitbox. And fence posts having a hitbox means that creepers can't walk around this fence post. So a creeper that spawns on this block here can't reach this block or this block or this block or this block. It only has two options, going into this hole here or into that hole here. Let's check it out. See? Can only move into a hole, which means it can only move downwards. So if you have a last platform on the bottom here at proper height, which means non-damage incurring height, with a water stream carrying your mobs into a killing chamber, well, you can just wait for them to effectively, willingly jump into their own death. And this is exactly what we're gonna do here. But before that, there is one little detail we have to solve. Like I said, we could use fence posts here instead of the buttons. But the problem with fence posts is that their hitbox is actually so big that every once in a while you can have two creepers fall down onto the same block here, and one gets pushed inside of the fence post. And if that happens, it gets stuck. So it can't move at all until it despawns. So it ends up hogging its place, its spot in the mob cap for what can be 30 seconds, which is a long time. Luckily, there's an alternative that we can use. Iron bars. Iron bars have only 1/4 of the hitbox of fence posts, and that hitbox is both enough to prevent them, like fence posts, from walking diagonally from one block to another, and too small for them to get stuck. So it's the perfect solution. Of course, you might be thinking, well, but it's iron, it's expensive, but come on. By the time you make a creeper farm, usually you've seen a couple of Hey Old Guys videos, so you know how to make a proper iron farm. And if you have a proper iron farm, well, I have good news. Because iron bars are actually quite cheap to make for what they are. With 6 ingots, you can have 16 iron bars. And you can have them just AFKing or building near your iron farm. In no time, you'll be done. So it's not that expensive, all things considered. It's actually quite cheap, and it's just something that you can gather AFKing versus fence posts, which would require you to harvest wood, which is an effort, and an annoying one at that. It's terrible, harvesting wood. Horrible, sure. So, now how do we make this bigger? Because you might already be seeing a little problem with this design. It's that we have to wait for mobs to decide to jump down on their own. So if you stack many platforms vertically, well, say you have 12 platforms, it can take a very long time for the mob spawning on the top platform to reach your water stream. So instead of stacking high in a tower-like fashion like most mob farms do, what we're gonna do here is stretch it to the sides and keep the number of platforms itself low. And I have exactly a little demo unit for you here. It's a 3-chunk wide design. It's 6 platforms high, and as you can see, we already have a creeper here. It's completely spider-proof at every angle, on every side. And well, it has just a couple of extra features that I haven't explained yet. First, yeah, let me just make it tick for a quick while. So here we have the stream I was talking about here, which leads to a trident killer here. It's not the easiest to use trident killer design. It's what I call the mob blender, an advanced version of the mob blender. The main problem with the mob blender is that it has to be turned on and off between sessions, because otherwise your tridents might glitch through the blocks underneath between session when you unlog and relog. So it's not beginner friendly, I'd say. It's more for people who are willing to turn their farms on and off and can trust other people on their SMPs to do the same every time they use the farm. Anyways, I use it because it's convenient, versatile, but you can use whatever trident killer you want, or even no trident killer and just use full damage. Simply adjust the stream shape here to match whatever shape you need in the middle here, which would probably be a 2x2 design. So you just add some water, maybe cut it half here, and then add a bunch of either signs or open fence gates to just allow mobs to pass and fall into their death here. Anyways, here, as you could see, probably there are no hoppers down there to retrieve the items, because I do it with a command block. The reason I do it with a command block is that it's easier. Let me clear the field from these creepers quickly. So here, my command block is here. I do it with a command block because it's just a lot easier for me to check where my items are, if they're flowing properly, when, how, and to troubleshoot if needed. So I just emptied it, we'll restart it and check the farm for a while. I almost forgot. There are the couple of extra features I was talking about. Here on the top platform you can see I have an alternated pattern of solid blocks and glass blocks. The reason for that is that this specific farm is made to allow surface spawns. Like this creeper here is a surface spawn, and these glass blocks here allow surface spawns to be transferred down here onto this block here. Otherwise it would be non-spawnable on the top platform and blocked on, and it would become cave on the platform immediately underneath. But it's not very important. You can just use full solid blocks here instead of using glass blocks or leaves, because basically since version 1.18 cave spawns have been doubled. So most of the items you're going to get will be from cave spawns. You can just use a half surface spawn platform, so with just solid blocks, or even no surface spawn platforms at all, and you could get rid of these two platforms even, or just use one and make it completely cave, and then well, just use 5 instead of 6 or 4 instead of 6. And the other feature that I must talk about is this here, this ridge. The reason this ridge is present is to avoid or prevent having creepers spawn onto these spots here. And the reason should be quite obvious by now. It's because these spots are too high from the platform below for these creepers to willingly jump down. For the time being, we could use, of course, open trapdoors to trick them into walking over, or coral fans. But like I said, this farm doesn't want to rely, we don't want this farm to rely on any kind of bugs or potential bugs at all. So I just leave the ridge in the middle. And I think this should be it for this little demonstration. So as a conclusion, we'll talk about the demerits and merits of this specific design. The demerits, or demerit because there's only one really, but it's a pretty big one, is obvious. It's the fact that mobs have to walk. You're relying on mobs walking willingly on their own into holes. And this can take some time. Sometimes they'll do it very quickly and jump down several platforms in a row, like these two just did on the left. But sometimes, like the one in the middle just did a couple of seconds ago, they'll just jump down one platform and then idle, and then jump down one platform and then idle. See, this one just did that. It jumped down and then idled for a couple of seconds. This can happen as well. So you can't expect the same kinds of rates from this platform as you'd get in, say, an insta-push design, where mobs fall down immediately to their death and have no choice whatsoever. To give you an idea, this 3 chunk wide design with its 6 platforms of height should yield anywhere between 15 and 16 stacks of gunpowder per hour, which is not great. It's not horrible, it's okay-ish, I'd say. It's not great, but it's, like I said, it's mostly for smaller SMPs and solo world. The merits of this design are, well, first and foremost, that it achieves the goal I had set for myself in the beginning, which was to build a creeper farm that doesn't rely on any bug to function. So basically you build this once and for all, and it will keep working for the foreseeable future, probably. there is nothing in it that Mojang might want to remove or consider a bug. Or at least as far as I can tell and see. So that's the first merit. It's perennial, probably. The second merit is that it's cheap. Again, iron bars, it's just some AFK time. Provided you have, and you definitely have one, a good iron farm. It's cheap because it uses iron bars, and it's cheap because it uses the least amount of trapdoors possible. And like I said in the beginning of the video, trapdoors are very annoying and very expensive to make. Basically, you can have it going in no time. If you say, for example, build it alone, I built a 2-chunk wide version of this farm on the experimental SMP I'm playing on currently with a couple of friends. And by the time I was done building the platforms, I already had enough iron to make all the iron bars I needed. Then it was just a matter of gathering wood, which was annoying as usual, to make the trapdoors. So it's cheap and perennial, but it takes time. It doesn't have the best rates. That would be my conclusion. Let's just check what kind of... Yeah, see? We already... In the time I talked, we already have over 2 stacks. So it's not that terrible. It's just not the greatest. Well, I guess this wraps it all for today. And if you have comments or questions, don't hesitate to post them in the comment section. If you liked or disliked this video, leave a comment as well. Don't hesitate to subscribe if you're interested in what I do. This is my first full English voiceover video, so I apologize for all the and hesitations and my poor pronunciation and my poor vocab. I might do more with full voiceover if I receive positive opinions for more of it. Otherwise, I'll just go back to my signs, which is how I used to. I've made all my previous videos using bilingual signs. And this is it. Subscribe if you like, and I hope I see you again soon in another video, which I'll post if I have ideas. Oh, I already actually have an idea for a video, but well, anyways, let's just see how this one goes, and I hope you like it, and I hope you build this contraption if you don't want to have to rebuild a creeper farm later down the line. Oh, see, we just saw one disappear right now here. Because it probably idled for too long. So this is part of the demerits of this farm. Sometimes you have creepers that just disappear because they idle for too long. But anyways, that's it for today. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.